The winter evening had a soft chill in the air when a tall man stepped out of a plain black car and walked toward a small roadside cafe. The cafe sat quietly at the edge of the highway, its neon sign flickering as if it was trying its best to stay alive in the cold wind. Inside, a warm yellow glow spilled across the windows, making the place look like a tiny pocket of comfort in a long stretch of silence. The man paused for a moment before opening the door. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy or loud, just a warm jacket, dark jeans, and old shoes that looked like they had seen many miles. Anyone passing by would think he was just another traveler trying to escape the cold. No one would imagine he was one of the richest men in the city, a person whose name often made headlines. But he liked it this way. He enjoyed peace without the weight of attention. Tonight, he wanted nothing more than a warm meal and a quiet place to rest his thoughts. As soon as he stepped inside, a soft bell above the door rang. The cafe was nearly empty. Only two older men sat near the window playing cards, and a young couple shared a bowl of soup at the corner table. Behind the counter stood a waitress with tired eyes, but a warm smile that refused to fade. She looked up the moment the door opened, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear as she greeted him. "Good evening," she said softly. "You can sit anywhere you like. I'll be with you in a minute." Her voice carried a gentle kindness, the kind that made strangers feel welcomed without trying too hard. The man nodded and chose a small table near the back, close to a heater. He rubbed his hands together, trying to warm them while glancing around the room. The place was old but clean, with simple wooden chairs and tables. A soft melody played from a small speaker behind the counter. It wasn't a fancy place, but there was something peaceful about it. A moment later, the waitress walked over to him with a menu. She placed it gently on the table and asked, "Can I get you something to drink first?" Her smile was sincere, the kind that stayed even though she looked tired from the long day. "Just water, please," he replied. She nodded and left to fill his glass. As she walked away, he noticed the slight limp in her step, maybe from standing all day. She moved quickly, trying to serve everyone without making them wait, even though there were only a handful of customers. When she came back with the water, he opened the menu. It was small, filled with simple dishes, sandwiches, soups, fried eggs, and a couple of daily specials. He read through everything slowly, then looked up at her. "I'll have the cheapest meal you have," he said. She blinked, surprised. "The cheapest? Are you sure?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly, as if she wasn't expecting that. He nodded. "Yes, whatever that is." She hesitated for a second, studying him. His clothes were clean but old. His hands looked tired, as if he had spent hours working. And the way he said it quiet, almost unsure, made her wonder if he was going through a hard time. Many travelers came to the cafe, some with stories that carried sadness, others with more questions than answers. She had learned to read people by the way they asked for things. "All right," she said gently. "The cheapest item would be the small vegetable soup. It's simple, but it's warm. I'll bring it out soon." He nodded once more, grateful. She gave a small smile before walking away. As she disappeared into the kitchen, he watched her move with purpose, doing everything she could to keep the place running smoothly. She treated every person with patience, even the old men at the front who were arguing about their card game. He sighed softly and took a sip of water. The warm lights made him feel calm. It had been a long day, filled with meetings, messages, and responsibilities he couldn't escape no matter how much he tried. People around him always wanted something: advice, money, support, attention. But here, no one knew him. No one cared about what he owned or what he could offer. When the waitress returned with the bowl of soup, she placed it in front of him carefully. "Here you go. Be careful. It's hot." He looked at the bowl. It was small, as she had said, but it smelled good. Fresh vegetables, gentle spices, and warmth rising in thin wisps of steam. "Thank you," he said. She paused before leaving, then asked quietly, "Is that enough for you? I can bring some bread on the side. No extra charge." Her voice held no pity, just kindness. She was offering help in a way that didn't make him feel small. He gave a small smile. "That would be nice. Thank you." She went to the kitchen again, and he watched her speak to the cook, still smiling despite her exhaustion. When she returned with a warm piece of bread, she placed it gently next to his bowl. "Here, it's fresh." She smiled again and squeezed her hands together to stay warm. "If you need anything else, just wave." He nodded, watching her walk away. Something about her left an impression on him. He couldn't place it yet, maybe the sincerity in her voice, or the way she treated him as if he mattered. Even when she believed he was just another struggling traveler dot as he ate the soup. He listened to the quiet sounds around him, the clatter of dishes, the soft music, the low murmur of conversations. The warmth of the food spread through him slowly, easing the tension in his shoulders. Each spoonful felt like a reminder of simpler times, long before he had money, long before people expected him to be someone special. The waitress checked on him twice, making sure he was comfortable. Each time, she wore the same kind smile. Not the kind people put on to impress someone, but the natural kind, the one born from a good heart. "Is the soup okay?" she asked the second time. "It's very good," he replied. "Thank you." She nodded with genuine relief. "I'm glad. Today's been a bit rough, so I wasn't sure if the cook was in the right mood. But I'm happy you like it." He watched her turn to help the older men at the front, refilling their tea and laughing softly at one of their jokes. She made the place feel lighter, warmer. Even though she was clearly exhausted, she carried herself with grace. He continued eating slowly, taking in the moment. He didn't want the meal to end too quickly. The peace he felt here was a rare dot after he finished. He pushed the bowl aside and sat quietly for a moment, thinking about how unexpectedly comforting the evening had become. He had walked in searching for warmth and rest, but he found something more. Something he couldn't name yet. When the waitress came back with the bill, she placed it gently on the table. But then she hesitated. "Actually," she said, lifting the paper again, "let me see something." She walked back to the counter, looked at the bill, then returned. "I gave you a small discount," she said with a quiet smile, "since you ordered the simplest thing on the menu. It's nothing big, but I hope it helps." He looked up at her, surprised. No one had ever tried to offer him a discount because they felt he needed it. If anything, people tried to raise prices for him, hoping his wealth would make him careless. "Thank you," he said softly. She shook her head. "No need. Sometimes people just need a small kindness. That's all." He looked at her again, this time paying attention to the way her eyes softened with sincerity. And in that quiet moment, he felt something shift. It wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was simple, like a spark of admiration. A feeling that began the instant she treated him like a person, not a problem or a customer or a wallet. He paid the bill and stood up. Before leaving, he glanced back at her as she wiped down a table. She looked up, smiled again, and wished him a safe night. He stepped out into the cold air with a warm feeling in his chest, one he had not expected from a roadside cafe. He walked toward his car, but paused for a second, looking back at the glowing windows one last time. The night was quiet, but inside him, something new had begun, something sparked by a simple meal and a waitress who had no idea how deeply her kindness had touched him. The next day arrived with a soft, pale light stretching across the sky. The billionaire woke earlier than usual, his thoughts drifting back to the small cafe on the highway and the waitress's kindness had surprised him. It wasn't the soup or the warm bread that stayed in his mind. It was the way she looked at him without judgment, without assumptions, and without expecting anything in return. That simple sincerity had lingered with him long after he had left. He sat by the wide window of his large, quiet apartment, sipping plain tea as the city woke up far below. Usually, mornings like this were filled with rushed phone calls, meetings lined up one after another, and messages waiting with questions he needed to answer. But today, he felt a strange calmness, as if a small part of him had shifted into a slower pace. His assistant called to remind him of a board meeting, a lunch appointment, and several emails that needed urgent replies. He listened quietly, nodded, and confirmed he would handle everything. But inside, he felt distant from all of it. His mind kept wandering back to the gentle voice from the cafe, the quiet smile, and the warmth of being treated like a regular person. Later, after finishing a long morning meeting, he found himself staring out the office window. Cars moved in smooth lines below, people hurried across crosswalks, and life carried on as usual. Yet something inside him felt different. He missed the simple peace of the night before, a place where no one asked anything of him, a place where he could sit quietly, without the world demanding he be someone important. By the time the afternoon meeting ended, he made an unusual decision. Instead of attending the dinner event planned for the evening, he told his assistant he needed some personal time. He left the office early, got into his car, and began driving without a specific direction. The steering wheel felt cool under his hands, and the familiar sound of the engine soothed him. Without planning it, he ended up on the same highway he had traveled the previous night. As the sun began to dip, the road lit up in soft orange and pink colors. He drove in silence, letting the calm wash over him. And soon, he saw the faint neon glow of the cafe in the distance. A small smile formed on his lips. He had no reason to go back, at least none he could explain. Yet he felt drawn there, as if something unfinished waited for him. He pulled into the parking lot and sat for a moment, wondering what he was doing. It wasn't normal for him to visit the same quiet place twice in such a short time. But something about the cafe had felt different from the world he usually lived in. He stepped out of the car and walked toward the door. The same soft bell rang as he entered. The smell of warm food and the sound of peaceful chatter filled the air. And there she was. The waitress from the night before stood behind the counter, arranging clean mugs on a rack. She looked tired again, but that warm smile still lived quietly on her face. When she looked up and noticed him, her eyes widened slightly, not in recognition of a famous face, but in gentle surprise. "You're back," she said with a small laugh. "I didn't think I'd see you again so soon." Her voice held genuine warmth, not forced or formal. He found that comforting. "I was passing by," he replied, though even he wasn't sure if that was the full truth. "Well, welcome back. You can sit anywhere you like," she said. He took the same seat as before, the one near the heater. As he settled in, she brought over a menu. "We have a few more items today than last night. The cook is in a better mood," she joked. He smiled, appreciating her natural way of speaking. "Good to know. What do you recommend today?" She placed her fingers lightly on the corner of the menu. "If you want something simple, the vegetable soup is still the cheapest. But if you want something filling, the grilled chicken plate is good. It costs a bit more, but it's worth it." He looked at her carefully. She wasn't trying to upsell anything. She was just giving honest advice. "What do you usually eat here?" he asked. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Honestly, I usually just have whatever is left over after closing. I don't always get time for a proper meal. Sometimes I make myself a sandwich if it's a slow night." He felt a small pinch in his chest at her words. Don't you get a break? She laughed softly, as if the idea sounded almost funny to her. Breaks are a luxury here. But it's okay. Work is work. You get used to it. He nodded slowly, thinking about how different her life was from his. He had assistants, planners, drivers, and entire teams making sure his schedule ran smoothly. She had tired feet, long shifts, and no time to rest. "I'll try the grilled chicken," he said. "All right," she said gently. "I'll bring it out soon." As she walked away, he watched her help a family sitting near the window. The little girl spilled her juice, and the waitress cleaned it up with patience, smiling the whole time. Then she brought an extra cookie for the child on the house. The mother thanked her with surprise, and the waitress just replied, "Kids have long days too." That unforced kindness struck him again. He couldn't help but admire it. She returned with his drink. "It might take a few minutes. The cook is starting fresh." She paused, then asked, "Were you driving far again today?" "Not really," he said. "I just wanted a quiet place." She nodded, understanding more than he expected. Quiet places are rare these days. And when you find one, you hold on to it. She smiled, then added, "I'm glad our little cafe gives you that." He watched her walk away, wondering how she managed to stay so kind despite the exhaustion that lived under her eyes. It was something he rarely saw in his world, genuine warmth without motive. When his meal arrived, it was simple but good. He ate slowly, letting the atmosphere of the cafe wrap around him like a warm blanket. Every now and then, she passed by to check on him, always with the same gentle smile. At one point, the older man who played cards the night before approached her angrily, complaining about his tea being too cold. Instead of snapping back, she apologized calmly and made him a fresh cup. Then she joked lightly, making him laugh despite himself. The billionaire watched the whole exchange, impressed. It took patience to remain that gentle. After he finished eating, she returned with the bill. "I didn't give a discount this time," she said playfully. "The chicken plate is a bit more serious." He chuckled softly. "That's fair." But before she turned away, he said, "Can I ask you something?" She paused. "Sure. Why are you so kind to everyone, even when they're not very kind to you?" She seemed surprised by the question. She looked down at her hands, thinking for a moment. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I guess people carry things we don't see. Hard days, worries, loneliness. Maybe someone is rude because they're hurting. Maybe someone looks tired because they haven't slept." She looked up again, her eyes soft but honest. "So I just try to be gentle, even when it's not easy. Maybe it makes a small difference. Maybe it doesn't, but I hope it does." Her words were simple, but they hit him deeply. Not because they were poetic, but because they were true. He nodded slowly. "It does make a difference. More than you think." She smiled, not fully understanding what he meant, and walked away to take another order. As he watched her, he felt something unexpected unfolding inside him. Something warm, something patient, something that didn't rush or demand anything. He didn't know what it was yet, but he knew one thing clearly. Her kindness had reached him in a place he had forgotten existed. The cafe wasn't just quiet and peaceful. It had become a space where he felt human again. And as he stepped out into the cool evening air after paying the bill, he realized that this wasn't going to be the last time he visited. Something about the place, and the gentle waitress who worked tirelessly inside, was drawing him back. Again and again, in ways he couldn't fully explain, the quiet drive back to the city that night felt different from the one before. The billionaire kept replaying small moments in his head, the waitress's patience with the older man, her soft laugh as she talked about the cook, the way she spoke about people carrying unseen burdens. Her words stayed with him in a way he didn't expect. He had heard many speeches, heartfelt stories from business partners, and emotional appeals from charity leaders. Yet somehow, the sincerity in her simple sentences struck deeper by the time he reached his apartment. The city lights shimmered through the tall windows like tiny stars caught in glass. He entered the quiet space, removed his jacket, and walked toward the large kitchen table where a pile of documents waited for him. Contracts, reports, investment opportunities, things that usually demanded his full attention. Tonight, he wasn't in the mood for any of it. He placed his keys on the table and sat down slowly. He knew he should be reviewing the proposals before tomorrow's meeting, but his mind drifted elsewhere. He found himself wondering how late the waitress worked, whether she got home safely, and if she had eaten anything more than leftovers again. He shook his head, surprised at himself. He had met countless people in his life, some impressive, some influential, but none of them had stayed in his mind like this. Not because she had done anything extraordinary, but because she had been real in a world full of pretenses. The next morning, his assistant greeted him with a list of tasks and reminders, speaking quickly as they walked down the office hallway. Normally, he absorbed every word, but today he only nodded along, distracted. During a meeting, one of his board members noticed his drifting gaze. "Everything all right?" the man asked. The billionaire blinked and straightened. "Yes, I'm fine." "You were saying?" They continued, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something meaningful was pulling his attention away from the usual noise of business life. Every time he tried to focus, the image of that cozy cafe and its warm lights surfaced in his mind. By late afternoon, he made a decision he didn't entirely understand. He finished his tasks earlier than expected, wrapped up the day's meetings, and excused himself. His assistant offered to arrange transportation or prepare documents for evening work, but he shook his head. "I just need some time alone," he said. As soon as he stepped out of the building, he felt a strange sense of anticipation. He got into his car and drove without hesitation, following the familiar road he had taken twice already. The sky slowly shifted from gold to soft purple as dusk settled. When the cafe's glowing sign appeared, he felt a sense of comfort. It was almost strange how a small, simple place could feel grounding. He parked and stepped out. The air was cool, the kind that carried the smell of distant rain. When he pushed open the cafe door, the soft bell chimed, welcoming him like an old friend. Inside, the warm lighting and familiar tables greeted him. The place was busier today: families, workers finishing their shifts, and a group of students with scattered notebooks. Despite the noise, the cafe still held its gentle charm. He spotted the waitress near the back, taking orders with her usual calm smile. When she turned and saw him, her expression brightened with surprise. "You're back again," she said, approaching with a small laugh. "At this point, you're going to make this place your second home." He chuckled softly. "I suppose I might." She guided him to a table that had just been cleaned. "You're lucky. This one opened up a minute ago." He sat down. "Busy today?" "Very," she said, sighing but keeping her smile. "Wednesdays are unpredictable. Sometimes we're empty, sometimes we're packed like this." She handed him the menu, though she already seemed to know he didn't really need it. "What would you like today?" she asked. He looked at her. "What do you suggest this time?" She tapped her chin dramatically, pretending to think hard. The soup is still the cheapest, but the cook made a stew today that's been getting good reviews." She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "He's proud of it. I think he added extra spices to impress everyone." He smiled. "I'll try the stew." "Good choice," she said warmly. As she walked away, he noticed the slight drag in her steps again. Long hours were wearing on her. He wondered how many days she worked without proper rest. He wondered if she ever had time to dream beyond the cafe. While waiting for his meal, he watched her move from table to table with steady patience. At one point, a child began crying loudly in the corner, and the tired mother apologized repeatedly. The waitress crouched down beside the child, gently distracting her with silly faces and a small napkin folded into a bunny shape. The child stopped crying almost instantly. The billionaire shook his head in quiet admiration. Her kindness wasn't something she switched on or off. It was a natural part of her. When she returned with the stew, she placed it on the table carefully. "Here you go. And I asked the cook to make it a bit milder, since you seem like someone who prefers gentle flavors." He raised an eyebrow. "You can tell that from 2 visits?" She shrugged with a playful smile. "I'm observant. It comes with the job." He laughed softly, but her words made him wonder what else she had noticed, and what he might discover about her if he kept coming back. He tasted the stew. It was warm, comforting, and flavorful, much richer than the soup from before. "This is very good," he said. "I'll let the cook know," she replied. Pleased not for a few minutes, he ate quietly, listening to the soft clinking of dishes and chatter filling the room. When she returned to check on him, he hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask something personal?" He said quietly. She looked curious, but not uncomfortable. "Sure. Why do you work so much? I've seen you twice now, and both times you look like you haven't had a break in days." She let out a slow breath. "It's complicated." She pulled out a chair slightly, not sitting but resting her hand on the back of it. "I have someone at home who depends on me. My younger sibling. I'm the only one supporting us right now." He listened closely, his chest tightening a little. "They're still in school," she continued, "and I want them to have a better future. I don't want them to worry about bills or rent. So I work extra hours whenever I can." She gave a small, tired smile. "As long as they're safe and fed, I don't mind being tired." He nodded slowly, feeling a deep respect rising inside him. "That's admirable." She shook her head. "It's just life. Everyone does what they need to do." He wanted to ask more about her dreams, her past, her hopes, but she was called by another customer. She excused herself and hurried away. He watched her the rest of the evening with new eyes. Every smile she gave, every plate she carried, every step she took seemed to carry a weight she hid behind kindness. He finished his meal and lingered for a while, waiting for a moment when she wasn't too busy. When she finally came to bring the bill, he asked, "Do you ever think about doing something else? Something for yourself?" She blinked, surprised. "For myself?" She tilted her head. "Like what?" "Maybe studying," he suggested softly. "Or pursuing something you enjoy." She laughed quietly, not out of mockery, but disbelief. "I used to dream about going to school again, studying design or something artsy." She looked down, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the bill. "But dreams take time and money. Right now, survival comes first." He felt a familiar ache in his chest again. "Still," she added, trying to brighten the moment, "I tell myself there's always later, even if later feels far away." He wanted to tell her she deserved more, that her kindness alone made her worthy of every opportunity. But he stopped himself. He didn't want to say anything that would sound strange or intrusive. Instead, he simply said, "I hope later comes sooner for you." She smiled at that one of her soft, genuine smiles that reached her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you think." As he walked out of the cafe again, the cool night breeze brushed against his face. He paused at the door and glanced back through the window. She was laughing with a customer, brushing her hair back as she hurried to serve another table. He stood there for a moment, slowly realizing something important, that her kindness wasn't just touching. It was inspiring. It reminded him of who he once was, before success had complicated his life. He got into his car with a quiet determination forming inside him. He didn't know what he would do yet, but he knew this. He wasn't visiting that cafe by accident. Something deeper was pulling him there. Something that connected their worlds in a way he couldn't ignore. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the dinner, the city felt unusually calm, as if the world had slowed down just enough to let two different lives catch their breath. The billionaire woke up earlier than usual, something he had not done in years. There was no meeting waiting for him, no assistant reminding him of tasks. Instead, he sat quietly near his window, looking out at the streets far below. He kept replaying the previous evening in his mind, the simple meal, the peaceful energy of the small restaurant, and the way the waitress had spoken to him without any hesitation. Her tone had been warm, but not forced, honest, but not disrespectful. It reminded him of a time long before he had reached this level of success. Back when people spoke to him without thinking about his bank account. As he sat there, he realized he had spent years surrounded by people who either wanted something from him or feared him. Very few treated him like a normal human being. But she had. She did not know who he was, and even if she did, he felt she wouldn't have changed the way she talked. That thought stayed with him. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the waitress arrived earlier than her shift required. She wasn't sure why she felt excited, but something about the previous night had stayed with her too. She kept remembering the moment he ordered the cheapest meal, how calmly he spoke, almost as if he was tired of being someone important not to her. He seemed like a man carrying a heavy weight, even though he hid it behind polite smiles. She didn't know why she felt a tiny worry for him, but she brushed it off and changed into her uniform. When her shift began, she kept glancing at the door without meaning to. It felt silly because she didn't expect him to return. In her experience, people who looked like him didn't visit the same place twice. But around noon, something unexpected happened. The front door opened slowly, and he stepped inside. He didn't wear a suit this time. Instead, he wore a simple sweater and jeans. He looked like an ordinary person, someone who could blend into any crowd without attracting attention. But what caught her eye was the hint of warmth on his face when he noticed her. "You're back," she said before she could stop herself. He gave a small nod. "I guessed the food might taste even better during the day." She smiled, shaking her head. "Well, I hope it does. Where would you like to sit?" "Same place. If it's free." "It is." She guided him to the table he had used the night before. He sat down and looked around the restaurant. "It feels different in the daytime." "It's quieter," she said. "People are usually busy at work right now." He looked amused. "And you? Are you busy?" "I like keeping busy," she replied. "It keeps my mind calm." He watched her for a second, noticing something gentle in her voice. "That's a good way to live." She went to get his order pad, and when she returned, she asked, "Same thing?" He shook his head lightly. "No, I want something better today." "Something you like?" Her eyebrows lifted with surprise. "Me? You want my favorite meal?" "Yes, I trust your taste." She didn't know how to respond, so she gave him a small grin. "All right, but it's not fancy." "I'm not here for fancy," he said softly. She felt something shift in the atmosphere, something almost fragile. She quickly turned away and went to prepare his order. While she was gone, he took a slow look around the restaurant again. He observed the wooden tables, the old photos hanging on the walls, the soft music playing in the background. It was a simple place, but every corner felt real. He found himself thinking about his own dining room back home. It was large, perfectly decorated, and always empty, quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Even when he invited people, the conversations felt rehearsed, shallow, predictable. Here, things felt different. When she returned with the plate, she placed it in front of him gently. "This is my comfort meal," she said. "I eat it when I'm tired or stressed. I hope you like it." He looked at the dish and smiled softly. "It looks perfect." As he took the first bite, she watched his face carefully. He took his time, tasting it slowly. "It's wonderful," he finally said. Her shoulders relaxed a little. "I'm glad." He noticed she seemed relieved, and he found that strangely touching. "You care a lot about the customers here." She shrugged. "I try. It makes the work feel meaningful." "Most people don't think that way anymore," he said. Quietly. "Maybe. But I like knowing I did something small to make someone's day better." He looked at her with a slightly thoughtful expression. "I think you made mine better yesterday." She blinked, not expecting that. "Really?" "Yes." His voice held no exaggeration. "You reminded me that kindness still exists without a reason behind it." She looked down, touched by his words. "Well, I'm glad. Everyone deserves a kind moment." For a brief second, he felt a strange emotion, something warm, something he had not felt in a long time, while he finished his meal. She attended to other customers, but she found herself glancing toward his table now and then. Each time she did, she saw him observing the restaurant calmly, never rushing, never showing signs of impatience. When he was done, she brought him the bill. But he didn't reach for it immediately. "Can I ask you something?" He said. She nodded. "Sure. Why do you work here? You seem like someone who could be doing something else if you wanted to." She smiled lightly, a little shy but honest. "I have responsibilities. Family things. And this place is close to home. It helps me keep everything balanced." He listened carefully, giving her his full attention. She continued, "Maybe one day I'll try something new. But for now, this is where I belong." He understood more than he expected. He too felt trapped by responsibilities, except his were measured in millions. Contracts, boards, and decisions that affected thousands. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the place that keeps us steady is the one we need the most." She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "Maybe that's true." It was a silence, but not an awkward one. It felt peaceful. After a moment, he signed the bill and stood up. She followed him toward the door. "Will you come again?" she asked before she could stop herself. He paused, then smiled gently. "If I do, will you recommend something else?" She nodded immediately. "Of course." "Then yes," he said softly. "I'll come back." He stepped outside, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was walking toward something meaningful rather than running from one obligation to another. Inside the restaurant, she watched him disappear down the street, her heart unexpectedly warm. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple meal, that simple moment, was about to lead them into a chapter neither had imagined, and neither was prepared for what would come next. The days that followed moved in a gentle rhythm, as if life itself had decided to slow down for them. Neither the billionaire nor the waitress had planned anything, and yet both of them found themselves thinking about their recent conversations. Something about the simplicity in those moments had touched them in ways they did not fully understand. He had visited the restaurant twice already. Each time, he tried a new dish she recommended, and each time he felt the same quiet calm settle into his chest. She never tried to impress him. She never tried to guess who he might be outside the restaurant's walls. She only treated him like a person who came in hungry and left with a warm smile. And that, to him, felt rare. For her, each of his visits surprised her just as much as the first. She would tell herself not to expect him, not to watch the door too many times, not to hope for anything unusual. But the moment she saw him walk in, wearing simple clothes and a soft expression, she felt something inside her lighten. On the fourth day, he arrived earlier than usual. The restaurant wasn't busy yet. Only 2 tables were occupied, and soft music filled the room in a slow, comforting way. She turned when she heard the door open, and when she saw him, her face lit up with a smile she couldn't hide. "You're early today," she said. "I thought I'd try breakfast here," he replied. "If that's okay." She laughed gently. "Everything is okay. Come on, sit wherever you like." He chose the same table, almost out of habit. It had already become familiar to him, like a safe corner he didn't know he needed. When she brought him a menu, he didn't even look at it. "What's your favorite breakfast?" he asked. Her eyebrows lifted. "You want me to pick again?" "I trust your choices," he said calmly. So she wrote down something simple: toast, eggs, and a side of fresh fruit. Nothing fancy, nothing heavy. When she returned to the kitchen, she found herself thinking about him more than she usually allowed. He was polite, quiet, and surprisingly humble. There was nothing about him that felt arrogant or loud. Even the way he looked at people was gentle, as if he always noticed their feelings before their words. As his food cooked, she kept glancing through the small window into the dining area. He wasn't on his phone or reading anything. He simply sat there, watching the sunlight move across the wooden floor. When she finally served the plate, she placed it in front of him with a small chuckle. "You trust me too much." "No," he said softly. "I think I trust you just enough." She looked at him for a second, unsure how to respond. Something warm stirred in her chest, and she quickly returned to her duties. He took his time eating. At one point, she came to check on him. "How's the breakfast?" she asked. "It's comforting," he said. "Feels like something someone would make for a person they care about." She felt her cheeks warm, but she pretended to focus on the plate. "I'm glad you like it." He watched her carefully as she turned to leave. "Thank you," he said. She glanced back with a soft smile. "You're welcome." A few minutes later, when she wasn't busy, she walked over again. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Of course." "Why do you always sit alone? Don't you have someone to eat with? A friend? A coworker?" He paused, not expecting such a direct question. For a moment, he looked down at his hands. "I have plenty of people around me," he said slowly, "but not many I can eat with in peace." She listened carefully, her expression softening. He continued, "Most of the people in my life, they see me as a job, or an opportunity, or a problem. Not many talk to me the way you do." She lowered her voice. "How do I talk to you?" "Like I'm a person first," he replied. "Not a title." His words settled between them in a quiet way. She didn't know his background, but she didn't need to. The emptiness behind his calm smile told her enough. After a few seconds, she said, "Everyone deserves at least one honest space in their life. Maybe this place can be that for you?" He looked up at her, eyes warm. "I think it already is." She felt her breath catch slightly, and she quickly looked away. "I should get back to work." "Take your time," he said gently. She walked away, trying to steady the flutter in her chest. When he finished the meal, he waved her over. She came to the table, holding the small notepad she always used. "No bill today," he said. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You have to pay." "I will," he said. "But first, I want to ask you something." She crossed her arms gently, curious. "Okay, ask." "Would it be all right if I invited you to lunch one day? Not here, just somewhere simple. Somewhere you choose." Her breath stopped for a second. She hadn't expected that, not so soon, not from him. And not in that soft, sincere way. I don't know," she said honestly. "That's fine," he said immediately. "You don't have to decide now. I just wanted to ask." She looked at him, searching his face. He wasn't pushing, wasn't trying to impress her. There was no arrogance, only a quiet hope. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you're real," he replied. "And because you make me feel real too." Her heart softened at those words. She didn't give him an answer yet, but something inside her shifted. After he paid, he stood up slowly. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. She nodded. "Okay." But as he reached the door, he stopped. "And if tomorrow isn't a good day, just tell me when is." She smiled softly. "We'll see." He pushed open the door and stepped outside into the cool air. The street felt brighter, more alive. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man carrying a fortune on his shoulders. He just felt like someone who had found a small corner of peace. Inside, she continued working, but her thoughts kept drifting to him. She didn't know where this connection would lead, or if she was ready for anything new. Her life was simple, quiet, filled with responsibilities. But he had brought something gentle into her days, something she didn't know she had been missing by the time her shift ended. The sun had started to set, painting the streets in warm colors. She locked the restaurant door and took a moment to stand outside, letting the breeze wash over her. She didn't know what her answer would be yet, but she knew one thing for sure. Something meaningful had begun between them. Something neither of them had expected. And sometimes life changes not with grand events, but with the smallest moments, a simple meal, a simple smile, and two people who found comfort in each other's presence. The next chapter of their story was waiting. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but for the first time in a long while, they both felt ready to find out.